What is up, everybody? Welcome to Apocalypse Movies. I am Jacob Bartley, and if you don't know already, this is the Movie Watching Challenge. We do a main show here every Tuesday called Apocalypse Now, and on that show, we have a segment called the Movie Watching Challenge, where every week somebody here at Apocalypse is challenged to watch a movie that they have never seen. And lately, I've been blessed with some great movies that I've been challenged to. And next up for me was Steven Spielberg's Lincoln, starring Daniel Day-Lewis. And this is a movie that I had on a list of movies that I've been wanting to watch for a long time, especially because, hey, it's Spielberg, arguably the GOAT in directing, working with Daniel Day-Lewis, arguably the GOAT in acting. And so it's something that had always been on my radar, but it has this kind of stigma around it that it's too long or that it's boring. And I feel like that those kind of labels that people have put on it kind of postponed my watching of it. And I was challenged by Jake Berlin, by the way. And thank you, Jake, because this movie is fantastic. Now, look, that's nothing new to hear from somebody, right? It was nominated for Best Picture, nominated for Best Director, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Screenplay, a bunch of actor nominations, and it won a few, including Daniel Day-Lewis as Lincoln. So, of course, it is a movie that most people would think is great. But to me, it took a movie that I was expecting to be, even if I thought it was great, maybe I thought it was, because I've had this situation before where, like, yeah, that movie was great, but it was a little slow for me. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody. This movie, honestly, I wasn't bored at all. Like, from the opening scene, beautiful scene, by the way, with the soldiers talking to him. And by the way, this movie has everybody in it. Well, look, there's a lot of characters who are played by actors that I know now, but back then weren't as big, and they make cameos, but their characters have one scene in the movie. And who was in this movie? We had David Oyelowo, we had Dane DeHaan, uh, a bunch of people. Adam Driver's in this movie, which I didn't even know any of those people were in this movie. But again, most of them only have one scene. And I'm like, hey, if I were one of those actors up and coming, and they were like, look, you get to be in a Steven Spielberg movie and you get to have a scene with Daniel Day-Lewis, sign me up. So I'm not surprised that those guys did that. And especially a lot of them were not at the point in their career that they are now. So that makes a lot of sense. But like I said, just they took this history lesson and they turned it into an enjoyable viewing experience. I love when movies that take place in certain eras don't go too deep into the way people spoke. And look, the way people talk changes over time, obviously. But there are certain ways that the way people talk has been similar and consistent throughout the times. And there's certain sayings and things that you said you said it the same way 80 years ago as you do today. And it's like, I feel like they kept the dialogue as simple as possible, without getting too complex or without diving into the slang of the time or the vocabulary of the time, if you will. And while it does have a lot of that vocabulary, because you can't make this movie without that, and when they did speak in those ways, it worked for me. But similar to, like, There Will Be Blood, another Daniel Day-Lewis movie, like, they kept the dialogue, simple, quick, and just very informative without talking too much. And I loved that. You got Joseph Gordon-Levitt in this movie, who's another one of my favorite actors, and I thought he was really good in his scenes playing Lincoln's son. And I love that storyline with Lincoln and his wife, played by Sally Field, and how they both didn't want their son to go into war. And it was like they made it seem as if the mom was the one who was nagging him about not letting their son fight in the war, and the Civil War, of course, is what we're talking about. But I love that scene when Lincoln is talking to his son, and it's almost like it's like you don't wanna admit that you don't want your son to go off to war because maybe it makes you less of a man, but they have this scene where they're arguing about it, and Lincoln's telling him, "No, you're not gonna go," and he's like, "Yes, I am, if I'll regret it for the rest of my life if I don't," and as he's walking away, Lincoln says, I can't lose you," like, under his breath, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, that is beautiful," because it's like, especially back then, every father is supposed to be proud to send their son off to war, but I love how they dealt with that in this movie. Um, a lot of the stuff, look, this movie is basically centers around abolishing slavery, and I look, it's a touchy subject, but I thought they handled it very well, and the way they dealt with it, and the way they talked about it and portrayed what Lincoln's mindset was from their perspective and from the source material that this movie's based on. And look, the history books, movies about history, none of it is 100% accurate. Like this movie makes Lincoln out to be a hero and a great guy, and partially he is, but we don't know what literally happened in every single room during these conversations back then. So it's the director and the writer's job to present it to the viewer at in the best way possible, whether that's depicting the characters as good people or bad people or whatever the case is. However you can tell the best story as a movie maker, that's what you're supposed to do. And whether everything that happens is 100% accurate, that's not the point. The point is you take these events and you portray them in a way that is, engaging and entertaining, as well as being something deep considering the subject matter. So I I love this movie, to be honest. Like it's not just because it's not the type of movie that you rewatch over and over again, but I I'm not going to watch it every year, but I will watch it again someday just because it is very enjoyable. And look, Daniel Day-Lewis, like it's hard to argue against him being the best actor of all time because every time I watch a performance, it's like, yep, yep, yep. And I watched There Will Be Blood recently, and that might be his best performance, but this is right up there because I swear, if you took somebody like 100 years from now and you were like, and you showed them this footage and you were like, this is actually President Lincoln back then, why wouldn't they believe it? Like if they didn't know who Daniel Day-Lewis was or Steven Spielberg, which they probably will know who they are. But just saying, if you showed an alien species this movie and be like, this is what happened, this was the American Civil War and the abolishing slavery, and because Daniel Day-Lewis is so seamless in the role, it's like he is Lincoln. Like I didn't see Daniel Day-Lewis in this movie. I saw Lincoln, honestly, and it's kind of scary. He was great throughout the movie, but especially look, I love the scenes with him talking with his wife. I love the scenes of him talking with his son, and I love some of those scenes where he doesn't really get angry, but he kind of gets like when somebody's trying to argue with him and he gets a little feisty. I like those scenes. So very deserving of a best actor win. Another phenomenal performance by Daniel Day-Lewis. And hey, look, what's next for me? I want to watch another Daniel Day-Lewis movie. Maybe I'll just go ahead and watch them on my own. But yes, thank you, Jake. A very, very good challenge, and I really, really enjoyed it. So the next part of this movie watching challenge is for me to choose somebody else on Apocalypse to watch a movie that they haven't seen. And my two choices this week were Keith or Geo, just based on the order that we've been challenged in. And if you were paying attention, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, as soon as Geo said he hasn't seen this movie, I knew it was going to be the next movie that I challenge him to. So, Geo, you will be watching The Godfather Part 2. I am so glad to bring this back as a topic of discussion here on Apocalypse. So, yes, that'll do it for my video. I watched Lincoln. I loved it. And, Geo, you're going to be watching The Godfather Part 2. Maybe I'll watch it with you. You are so lucky to be able to view that movie for the first time. Again, I'm Jacob Bartley, and this is the movie watching challenge from Apocalypse Movies. Don't forget to check out our Tuesday show, Apocalypse Now. Thanks again. I'll see you all next time.